The first time he asked me to sign the papers, I felt an unease, something unspoken curling in my chest. But I trusted him. I believed him when he said it was nothing, just a favor for a friend. "Just sign this for me, love," Sam said, his voice warm, his usual easy smile softening the tension that hung between us. I paused, pen in hand, a sudden hesitation gripping my thoughts. "Who's it for?" "It's for a friend of mine," he replied quickly, his eyes darting toward the kitchen window. "A friend from the past. He's in a tight spot and could really use the help. Don't worry, we're covered. It's a small loan and he'll pay it back in no time." I hadn't even asked for the specifics. I should have. But his calm demeanor, the trust one had placed in him over the years, made it all feel so trivial. Sam and I had been through so much together, good and bad, but always united, always solid. So, I signed the papers. A simple favor, I thought. A small gesture for someone Sam called a friend. A promise of trust. But in that simple act, I sealed the fate of everything I held dear. Before all this, our life together was what you'd expect. There was nothing extraordinary about it. But there didn't need to be. It was comforting, steady, a rhythm I had grown to love. Our house was small, but it was our home. I can still picture the mornings when the sun would spill over the kitchen table, casting soft light on the worn wood. The smell of coffee, strong and comforting, always filled the room, and Sam would be there, humming a tune, his eyes still heavy with sleep as I made breakfast. We were never rich, but we had enough. We worked hard, he at the office, me at the small local bookshop I owned. Our children, Emma and Jack, had grown up in that house, and when they visited, it felt like everything was right in the world. They'd come over on Sundays, and the house would fill with laughter, their voices bouncing off the walls, mingling with the clatter of dishes and the sizzle of whatever we were cooking. Those days were my favorite. Sam was the kind of man who would give you the shirt off his back. He had a good heart, or so I believed. He was the perfect partner. Or, at least, I thought so. We'd had our rough patches, of course. What marriage doesn't? But those moments felt small, insignificant compared to the larger picture. There were times when Sam would come home late, stressed from work, and I'd know to leave him be. There were times when I'd grow frustrated, when things felt off, but I told myself that was just life. Marriage wasn't always easy, and that was okay. Still, even with all that stability, there were moments, little glimpses, when something felt off. Something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't a feeling that hit me all at once, but something that lingered, just beyond my reach. Like a distant whisper, barely audible, but always there. I didn't dwell on it. I didn't want to. Life was good. We were good. But everything changed the day I signed those loan papers. It started slowly, so subtly, I almost missed it. Sam began acting a little differently. It wasn't anything dramatic, at least, not at first. Little things that felt out of place. There were the late nights at work that became more frequent, but I told myself it was just the pressure from his job. It wasn't like him to come home late without a good reason, but sometimes work just demanded more of him. I tried not to think much of it. Then, there were the phone calls. I could hear him talking quietly in the other room, his voice low, too soft for me to catch all the words. At first, I thought nothing of it. He was probably making business calls, handling something important. But as the days went on, something in the way he spoke to whoever was on the other end felt strange. "Yeah, I'll take care of it," he said one night, his tone almost too calm. "But you've got to keep this between us. I don't want her to know." Her. The mention of a woman, someone Sam was clearly hiding from me, made my heart skip a beat. I stood there, frozen, my hand gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, waiting for him to walk into the room. When he did, he seemed completely at ease. As if nothing was wrong. As if I hadn't just overheard him speak in a way that I couldn't understand. "Everything okay?" I asked casually, trying to hide the unease in my voice. "Yeah, just work," he said with a smile, kissing me on the cheek. "You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. And that unease grew, a small seed of doubt planted in the back of my mind. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Sam had always been a good husband. He wasn't the type to hide things from me. But the more I thought about it, the more that seed began to grow. What was he keeping from me? And who is this woman? The truth came crashing down one afternoon when I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through some bills. That's when the letter arrived. It was addressed to Sam, but the return address was unfamiliar. I opened it absent-mindedly, assuming it was just another piece of junk mail. But when I saw the loan agreement inside, my breath caught in my throat. It was the same loan I had signed, the one I thought was for Sam's friend. But this time, the name on the papers wasn't a stranger. It was a name I knew all too well. Rachel, Sam's ex-wife. I felt the ground slip out from beneath me. I stared at the papers, the weight of the truth crashing into me. The loan wasn't for a friend. It was for Rachel, the woman Sam had promised me was nothing more than a past chapter in his life. But what hurt more than the name on the loan papers was the realization that Sam had used our home as collateral. The home I had poured my heart into, the place I had believed was safe from the outside world, now it was part of their deception. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the papers, my mind racing, my heart shattering with each passing second. I had been betrayed. I sat there, holding the loan papers, my hands trembling. The sound of the clock ticking in the background suddenly felt deafening, a steady reminder of how time had betrayed me too. My mind raced, and I could feel my chest tightening, every breath harder to take. It was as though the walls of our home, the one place I had always felt safe, were closing in on me. How had I been so blind? Sam had never once mentioned that Rachel was involved. He had never said anything about her needing help, about her being in a tight spot. All I knew was that he had asked me to sign something for a friend. And like a fool, I had trusted him. I had signed my name without asking questions. And now, that trust had been shattered, and I had unknowingly put everything at risk. I picked up my phone, the screen trembling in my hands as I dialed Sam's number. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice light, too light. Like nothing had changed. "What's up?" I couldn't speak for a moment. My throat felt tight, as though the words were stuck somewhere deep inside, refusing to come out. "Who is Rachel?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, finally, Sam's voice came through, a little shakier than before. What do you mean?" I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Who is Rachel? And why the hell is she the one on this loan you asked me to sign? Why is she using our house as collateral?" His silence was deafening. For a moment, I thought he might deny it. But then he spoke, his voice low, almost too soft. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, his words hesitant, unsure. "Rachel. She's going through a tough time. I thought I could help her, but I didn't know how to tell you about it." "You didn't know how to tell me?" I repeated, feeling the anger bubble to the surface. "You lied to me, Sam. You didn't tell me about Rachel, and you didn't tell me about the loan. You kept everything from me." "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he pleaded. I thought I could fix things without worrying you." "Fix things?" I snapped, standing up, pacing the kitchen floor. "You didn't fix anything, Sam. You've put everything we have at risk, and for what? To help your ex-wife." He didn't answer, and the silence that followed felt heavy, like the weight of everything we had built together was suddenly crumbling, piece by piece. "I trusted you," I said, the words coming out barely above a whisper. "I trusted you, and you broke that trust. You've lied to me, and I've had enough." I hung up before he could say another word. My heart was pounding in my chest, my hands shaking. The man I thought I knew, the man I had built my life with, was gone. In his place stood someone who had lied, who had used me, and who had betrayed everything we had together. I don't know what I expected from Sam after the call, but it wasn't what happened next. He didn't come home right away. The house was empty, and I sat there, staring at the papers on the table, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. I could still feel the sting of his words, his excuses, and his empty apologies. I had always trusted him, and now I didn't know what to believe anymore. What else had he hidden from me? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait around for Sam to give them to me. I called a lawyer the next morning, feeling a sense of urgency I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't let this go. The lawyer's office was quiet, and the woman who helped me was patient, listening as I explained everything I had learned. She listened to me carefully, asking pointed questions, taking notes. "You were right to come to us," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You've been taken advantage of. The loan is fraudulent, and your name shouldn't be attached to it. We'll make sure this is reversed." I felt a small sense of relief as the lawyer explained the process, but the damage had already been done. My trust in Sam was gone, and the foundation of our life together had been shaken. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. I wasn't going to let Sam, nor Rachel, take away what I had worked so hard to build. I spent the next few days organizing everything, going over the loan papers again, and taking note of every detail. The more I learned about the situation, the clearer it became that I had been lied to from the very beginning. It wasn't just the money, the house, or the loan, it was the trust that had been broken. I was determined to stand my ground. Sam could try to justify his actions, but I wasn't going to back down. I was going to fight for my home, for my peace of mind, and for the life I had built. When Sam finally came home, I was ready. He looked at me with a mix of guilt and desperation, but I didn't care anymore. "I'm calling the bank," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to make sure this loan is canceled. And I'm going to make sure our house is safe." Sam opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. "I don't want to hear it," I said. "You've lied to me long enough. Now it's time to make things right." It didn't take long for the truth to come out. I called the bank and met with the loan officer, who confirmed everything I had suspected. The loan had been processed with Sam's approval, but the collateral, our home, was tied to it without my knowledge. When the news broke, it spread like wildfire. Friends, family, even our neighbors learned what had happened. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was no longer the woman who had been kept in the dark, the one who trusted blindly. I had exposed the truth, and now Sam was forced to face the consequences of his actions. But it wasn't just Sam who suffered. Rachel's name was now connected to the loan, and she had to answer for what she had done too. I never once called her or tried to get revenge. My focus was on making sure the situation was rectified. But I knew that she too would have to face the consequences of her betrayal. I was no longer angry though. I was calm, resolute. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about standing up for myself and making sure that my home and my life was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. Weeks passed before things finally began to settle down. The loan was officially canceled, the collateral, our home, was no longer at risk, and the legal papers were in place to protect me from any further consequences of Sam's actions. The relief that came from knowing I had regained control was palpable, but that didn't mean the pain was gone. Sam didn't fight me on it anymore. The day I received confirmation from the bank that everything had been reversed, I saw the weight of the situation hit him. His shoulders were slumped as he sat across from me at the kitchen table. He didn't apologize, not in the way I needed him to anyway. Instead, he just stared down at his hands, as if trying to come to terms with the mess he had made. "I didn't want it to go this way," Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You should have thought about that before all this started," I replied, not unkindly, but with a cold firmness that had taken root in me. "You think I don't understand that? I trusted you, Sam. But you put our family in jeopardy for what? For a lie." His eyes lifted to meet mine, but they weren't the same eyes I had fallen in love with. They were filled with regret, yes, but there was something else, too, something that I couldn't quite place. "I thought I was helping," he said, but his words sounded empty now, like echoes of a man who had no idea how much damage he'd done. "Rachel needed me. She's been struggling, and I just..." "Stop," I cut him off. "You didn't help anyone. You used me. You used this family as a shield to cover up your own mess. And for what? For her." Sam opened his mouth to argue, but he didn't. There was nothing he could say to make it right. I stood up from the table, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sorrow wash over me. I didn't feel angry anymore, though I had every right to. The anger had faded, replaced by a kind of finality. There was no more fighting, no more pleading. There was just the silence that filled the space between us, thick and heavy. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to stay in a marriage built on lies, no matter how much I had once loved him. In the days that followed, I took time for myself. I went to the park, walked through the streets without a destination, and took solace in the quiet moments that had been stolen from me for too long. The world felt different now, as though the weight of everything I had learned was slowly lifting. I didn't need Sam to make me feel whole again. I was learning to rebuild myself piece by piece. There came a day when Sam finally asked, his voice hesitant, "What happens now?" I'd been expecting this question, knowing that it would come sooner or later. The question that always hung in the air after betrayal, after the dust settled and the truth had been exposed. What happens now? I looked at him, standing there in the doorway, his expression vulnerable. But I didn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. "I don't know what happens next for you," I said, my voice calm, "but I know what happens for me. I move on." He didn't say anything at first. I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I wasn't going to apologize for my decision. He had hurt me in a way that couldn't be fixed by just saying sorry. And no matter how much I had once loved him, I couldn't just sweep it all under the rug and pretend everything was fine. "I'll go," Sam finally said, his voice tight. "I'll leave." "You don't have to leave," I said, surprising myself. "But I can't keep pretending that everything's okay. Not when you've broken my trust. I don't know where we go from here, but it's not together." He nodded slowly, his face hardening as though he had accepted my words, though they clearly hurt him. I could see that he wanted to say more, but he didn't. There was nothing left to say. And just like that, he left. Just like that, everything changed. In the weeks that followed, I started to piece my life back together. I wasn't whole, not yet, but I could feel myself healing. I focused on my work, throwing myself into the bookshop I had always loved, something that had been pushed to the background for too long. I made time for myself. I spent more time with my kids, found joy in their laughter again, and felt the warmth of family in a way I hadn't in years. I slowly stopped checking the door every time Sam came home late, waiting for an explanation. I stopped holding my breath when I saw his name flash on my phone. And with each passing day, I grew stronger. I wasn't afraid anymore. There were days, of course, when the loneliness crept in. When I would sit in the quiet of my house and wonder if I had made the right choice. But deep down, I knew I had. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. But it was necessary. And then, there were moments when I would sit outside on the porch, the evening sun casting its warm glow over the yard, and I would think about how far I had come. How much I had learned about myself, about what I deserved, and about how I could move forward, stronger than before. I wasn't broken. I wasn't ruined. I was simply changing, growing. And now, I ask you, my friends, what would you have done? If you had been in my shoes, would you have walked away too? Would you have stood up for yourself and said, "No more"? Or would you have tried to fix it, despite everything that had happened? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you found something in this story that resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories of strength, betrayal, and healing. Until next time, remember this. Sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is let go. But it's also the thing that allows you to grow. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments.